In Japanese culture, there is the belief that women are closer to the other side, and thus to the preternatural world. While men are represented by dry warmth, women are tied to the concept of wetness and cold, much like Japanese spirits are. Due to women being regarded as more emotionally expressive and vulnerable than men, they are more closely tied to the other side, both as mediums and as ghosts, left behind to haunt their final resting grounds after death. Generally, these ghosts are referred to as yurei, who in turn fit into several subcategories, where Onryo, the vengeful spirit, is the most prominently portrayed in folk tales and media. These spectres have the power to influence and affect the living, able to enact their revenge upon those who scorn them in life. There is a second category of creatures, often translated as demons in Western media, the yokai. Yokai are not like traditional Abrahamic demons, but rather serve as nature sprites and spirits with a more elemental twist. The lines often blur between which spirits count as yurei and which count as yokai. Some are even considered to be both. What is clear is that many of these yokai too are female and pose danger to righteous, or at times not so righteous, men. Some of these ghosts and ghouls are familiar household names for any person with a mild interest in Japanese folklore, and some are not so well known. With this pre-knowledge, let us delve into a somewhat comprehensive list of female yurei and yokai, and perhaps there is some new thrilling entity to be discovered. Kuchisake Onna. Kuchisake Onna, or the slit-mouthed woman, is a yurei. She is most commonly portrayed as wearing a surgical mask to cover up her horrifically scarred face, as her mouth has been slit from ear to ear in a huge bloody grin. In some stories, it is she herself who slit her cheeks, and in others, it was done by an enraged lover or family member. To accompany this mask, the spirit also wears a long dark trench coat and carries with her a pair of sharp scissors. She will approach random strangers, preferably young school children, and ask them, "Watashi kirei?" Am I pretty? If they agree, she reveals her mutilated features and demands to know whether they still agree that she is pretty. If the answer is no, or a horrified scream, she slits them a similar Glasgow smile, and if the answer is yes, she will disappear, only to reappear at night and finish what she started. The only means of escape from Kuchisake Onna is to tell her that she looks alright, average, or so-so, which will confuse her enough to allow the intended victim their escape. Kaido Nyobo. Kaido Nyobo translates to frog wife, and they are a type of yokai who in all manner behaves just like a human woman, apart from the fact that their strength is much lesser. Indeed, they are so weak that they can perform very little in ways of hard work. This yokai actually starts out as a small frog, who then transforms into a woman in order to marry a man. As a frog is small and weak, so too is the Kaido Nyobo. Remaining disguised, there is nothing about the marriage between a man and his frog wife that would indicate harm or danger. But if the husband ever catches his wife out as a frog, tragedy will befall the pair as she returns to her original form. Umi Nyobo. Umi Nyobo, or the sea wives, are vicious yokai found in and along the ocean shores. They appear much like human women, but with fish-like features, such as scaly skin and webbed fingers and toes. They are also said to possess razor-sharp teeth, and while they rarely use their strength to catch and prey upon anything other than fish, humans are not entirely off the menu. Umi Nyobo are able to get by on land for brief amounts of time, but must always return to the sea. Some iterations of the tale mention that they are unable to vocalize as humans, and as such cannot speak. Despite sometimes killing humans for food, they may also show mercy and even compassion towards humanity. The origins of these fishwomen vary, but it is often said that they are spirits of women lost at sea. Oiwa. Oiwa is the first of Japan's big three ghosts, and thus one of the most well-known yurei in the country. The gist of her tale is that she was married to a selfish man who desired another woman, upon which he poisoned her. Unfortunately for him, Oiwa did not die, but was instead left physically deformed and scarred. Oiwa had always been considered breathtakingly beautiful, and was at first kept from viewing her face post-tragedy. Once she manages to sneak a peek, she is driven insane by the horrific visage. Stricken, Oiwa either dies of shock or takes her own life, upon which she begins to haunt her husband after he remarries. Oiwa then possesses his new wife and tricks him into killing her instead, before he is eventually driven insane, and either killed by Oiwa or takes his own life as well. Chinuya. Chinuya translates to milk mother, and she is a type of yurei that appears as a regular woman, albeit with abnormally large breasts. She sports long black hair and soft motherly features, and much as her name suggests, she carries a fondness and love for children. Usually, Chinuya can be found near graveyards where children have been buried, and they are said to nurse and watch over the children who have perished. They tend to reside in pools of water, and sometimes in trees, and it is their supernatural milk that they use to feed the ghostly children that keep them company. If a child who is under 6 years of age passes away, it is customary to sometimes leave a small box of food for the Chinuya, so as to aid the benevolent spirit's cause. Yamauba. Yamauba is a witch, living in the mountains with an evident appetite for human flesh. She will disguise herself as a young, helpless woman in order to lure unsuspecting victims to her lair, and as soon as the victim falls asleep, she devours him. According to the legend, she used to be a regular woman until her living area was struck by famine, and she was driven to find shelter in the mountains, as her family would not feed her, and thus doomed her to starvation. Here, Yamauba lost her mind, and resorted to cannibalism in order to sustain herself, and her unending agony turned her into what she is. The Onibaba are similar types of yokai, where a woman has been turned into a demonic old hag as punishment for some slight or other. Another name for these kinds of yokai is Kijo. Ameonna. Ameonna translates to rain woman, and she can be either a yokai or a yurei. She used to appear along mountainsides in the olden days, but these days you will find her in dark alleyways during rainfall. Generally, her appearance is that of a fallen or disheveled woman, drenched in water as she either brings the rain or is summoned by it, which is not always quite clear. The Ameonna commonly licks the rain from their own arms, and are said to kidnap and spirit children away, with their favorites being newborn girls. Some believe that they eat these children, and others believe that the Ameonna's only sustenance is the rainwater. The Ameonna are malevolent beings, and women whose children have been stolen by the Ameonna are said to turn into Ameonna themselves. It is said that their grief drives them insane, and thus they kidnap other women's babies to regain what was once lost to them. Daduma-san ga kodonda. Daduma-san ga kodonda is supposedly a deadly game of hide-and-seek that can be played with an onyo, or vengeful spirit, of a woman named Daduma-san. It is said that Daduma-san fell in a bathtub for one reason or other, only to gouge her eye out on the faucet and die either from impact or blood loss. Either way, her spirit can be summoned by a ritual taking place in the bathtub, where someone bathes in a pitch-black bathroom, washing their hair while repeating the phrase, "Daduma-san fell down." After a while, the form of another person may appear behind the player, upon which they will get a vision of the tragic event portraying Daduma-san's demise. The player must then ask Daduma-san, "Why did you fall?" before getting up, exiting the bathroom, and going to sleep. In the morning, Daduma-san will be following the player out of the corner of their eye, getting progressively closer. She can be delayed by the player if they turn around and yell "Stop" when they see her, but this can only be used so many times, as she will continue her chase just as close as she was when she stopped. Before nightfall, the player must get a clear view of her before turning around, and while making a chopping motion through the air, yell, "I cut you loose." If this fails, the game is not over, and Daduma-san will collect her due while the player sleeps. Hinoenma. Hinoenma are yokai with malicious intent, who take the shape of beautiful young women in order to hunt and lure their prey. They are considered to be the most stunning of all demons, and they foremostly target young monks for their nefarious intent. Once a man is victimized, the Hinoenma will feed on his virility and strength, much like a succubus, until he is weak and ruined. As the Hinoenma drains the life from her victim, she will move on to the next in order to sustain herself. Hanako-san. Hanako-san of the bathroom might be one of the strangest Japanese urban legends. As a ghost haunting bathrooms in particular, she was likely conceived during the 1950s, during air raids, and is a fairly recent addition to the canon. While there are different iterations of her legend, it is generally said that she will inhabit the third stall of any public ladies' room situated in a school or campus building. She can be contacted after nightfall, upon which one may knock on the door to her stall 3 times and receive a reply from her. In some versions, she will kill the unlucky person disturbing her, but in others, she simply replies in a kindly manner. Nikusui. Nikusui translates to meat sucker, and is one of the closer equivalents to the European vampire that the Japanese folklore has to offer. Nikusui, however, are considered to be female yokai, often taking the form of very young, beautiful women. As per custom, Nikusui prey on young men traveling alone at night time, and these men are often carrying a lantern. Thus, when the Nikusui approaches the man, she will offer to carry his lantern, upon which she snuffs out the light, so that she can overpower her victim in the darkness and suck the meat off his bones. Sometimes, Nikusui will also use sex to persuade their victims before devouring them. Futakuchi onna. Futakuchi onna is in almost all senses of the word a regular woman, albeit still a yokai. In some areas, she is even thought to be a Yamauba who has shapeshifted. However, she most commonly appears as a woman with a second mouth located at the back of her head. This second mouth is enormous, possessing rows of sharp teeth, and her hair forms 2 tentacles, or appendages, with which the mouth feeds itself. Futakuchi onna's diet consists of the same thing as any ordinary woman, except she eats the double amount due to her 2 mouths. Her name literally translates to two-mouthed woman. And if there's any household in which the ladies eat scarcely little, but the food stock still seems to be dwindling, it may be suspected that one, if not all of them, are Futakuchi onna in disguise. Dodomeki. Dodomeki is a yokai in the shape of a young woman. However, as the name roughly translates to many-eyed woman, this suggests what her quirk is. Dodomeki has abnormally long arms covered in hundreds of tiny bird's eyes. Originally a human woman, Dodomeki has been cursed for their tendency to commit petty theft, in particular their habit of stealing money. As a punishment for their crimes, their arms will grow in length as hundreds of eyes sprout from the skin, and the feature of the long arms is actually a more literal interpretation of the notion that thieves and pickpockets in Japan are considered to have long arms. Hadionna. Hadionna is another yokai, whose name translates to the Hook Woman, and much like almost every other female yokai, she is youthfully beautiful and preys foremostly upon young, handsome men. Her hunting grounds are limited to Shikoku Island, upon which she'll appear along the roads post-nightfall. From a distance, there is nothing curious about Hadionna, apart from her loose, long, unruly hair. However, upon close inspection, you will find that the tips of her hair are fitted with tiny barbed hooks, but being close enough to view these is pretty much already guaranteeing that you won't live to tell the tale. Upon attack, Hadionna's hair will shoot out and sink its hooks into the flesh of her victims, and not even the strongest man would be powerful enough to wrestle free. As soon as her prey is caught, Hadionna will rip it in pieces with the hooks and devour him. Her tale was likely conceived as a means of warning young men against picking up strange, unfamiliar women in the middle of the night. Ubume. Ubume is, in short, the ghost of a mother or mother-to-be who refused to abandon her children after death. Most commonly, she is the mother who died in childbirth, and seeing as the child might have no means of sustenance, her spirit lingers in order to protect and nurture her child. Desolate, the Ubume walks the streets at night to pocket food or other items for her infant, and even attempting to buy necessities. She has no earthly currency on hand, however, and often uses dead leaves in an attempt to pay for herself. Ubume may also be a woman who died alongside her child, upon which she carries the ghost of her baby in her arms on dark, stormy nights. Aonyobo. Aonyobo, or the Blue Lady, is often described as an immense yokai, hidden away inside abandoned ancient mansions. Indeed, the spirit is hideous, with ogre-like features, who takes on the appearance of an elderly noblewoman, as she embodies poverty and misfortune. Her once fancy garments are now in tatters, and her wrinkled features are traditionally painted white, with high drawn-on eyebrows and blackened teeth. Haunting the once domains of ruined noble families, she tends to her parents as if waiting for a visitor that never arrives. If anyone comes across her, she is sure to devour them. Her name does not refer to the color blue, but rather it serves as a cultural reference to immaturity, and Aonyobo was once a naive young woman, now turned into an old and bitter hag. Rokurokubi. Rokurokubi is often referred to as the long-necked woman in English, and she is a yokai that presents herself as human during daytime. During the day, she is a beautiful woman, but by night, she transforms into a creature with a snake-like neck. Not all legends of Rokurokubi are deadly, but while some of them only speak of the demon startling humans, others are quick to mention that she will trap and devour any human within her reach. Generally, Rokurokubi functions as an ordinary person in society, with a normal family and daily job, and she may not even be aware of the fact that she is a yokai. However, she may be recognized and identified by the tiny white stretch marks on the sides of her neck, as they foretell of how her neck elongates during nightfall. There is also a variation of Rokurokubi called Nukekubi, whose neck completely detaches from their bodies come night, rather than simply elongating. Additionally, Nukekubi are much more prone to violence than Rokurokubi, and their severed heads will fly around, attacking nearby animals and people to viciously drink their blood. Yoroguma. Yodoguma is a yokai, and she is commonly depicted as a gigantic spider known to shapeshift into a beautiful young woman. This is her measure of trapping humans, which the Yodoguma is known to feed upon. She can be recognized by the fact that her shadow still resembles that of a spider, even while in her human form, and she can typically be found in forests or cave systems, although abandoned houses may also host a Yodoguma or two. The Yodoguma's prey of choice is handsome young men, especially those who are single and desperate for someone to love. Once the Yodoguma has targeted their victim, they will seduce him into entering their lair, upon which they reveal their true form and devour him. Hashaku-sama. Hashaku-sama translates to the 8-foot-tall woman, and her name very much reveals the quirk of her nature. This gigantic ghostly yurei is a rather recent addition to the canon of Japanese urban legends, and she targets primarily children whom she abducts. She makes an odd pa 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 noise upon approach, and is reluctant to ever give up her chase. The most famous variant of her tale is that of a boy picking up on this odd sound as he is spending time at his grandparents' residence. As he follows it, he spots the 8-foot-tall woman. The child naturally tells his grandfather about the incident, and he is quickly brought to a priest and locked up for the night with sacred scrolls as protection. He is strictly forbidden to open the door, and when he hears the telltale noise of his grandfather's voice morph into that of Hashaku-sama, it is revealed that she can mimic voices. Hashaku-sama is not thwarted, however, and the boy is quickly driven from the area and must vow never to return, or else she will find and kill him. Teke-teke. Teke-teke is a vengeful yurei, an onryo of a woman who died at the train tracks. In most iterations of her tale, she was a schoolgirl who fell from a bridge suspended above the tracks and was subsequently killed as the train wheels cut her in half. She is said to haunt every train-adjacent area in Japan, hunting for a new lower body so that she may find peace. It is the sound she makes while crawling on her hands and elbows that has given her her name. Tick, 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 tick. And she is inhumanly quick and notoriously difficult to outrun should she be encountered. If she catches you, there are no means of escape, making her a decidedly grim spectre to run into. Kashimadeiko. Kashimadeiko is similar to Teke-teke, and sometimes even considered to be the same spirit. And hers is the ghostly tale of a young woman's tragic demise, not uncommonly also at the train tracks. It is said that 1 month after you've heard her story, or even her name alone, she will visit you. In her tale, she is often beaten up by a violent gang, and in means to escape she crawls onto the train tracks only to be split in half by the oncoming train. Much like Teke-teke, Deiko is looking for her missing legs, or a pair of substitute ones. It is not uncommon for her to appear to someone who's in the bathroom and supposedly more vulnerable to her inquiries, but luckily there is a way to deflect her. When she appears, she will ask where her legs are, and you must tell her, at Meishin Expressway. She will then ask you who told you this, and you must reply, "You did, Kashimadeiko." She may then pause before asking you if you know her true name, upon which you must reply, "Yes, Masked Death Demon," as these 3 words are the kanji that make up her name. Allegedly, this will cause her to disappear and leave you alone. Honeonna. Honeonna translates to Bone Woman, and she is a female yokai desperately searching for her lost love. She will usually reveal herself as a young woman wearing traditional Japanese garbs, and the most famous Honeonna is undoubtedly Utsuyu, who is another of Japan's big 3 ghosts, so Honeonna is another yokai and yurei. Utsuyu is known from the story of the peony lantern, which is exactly the item she carries in the tale as she looks for her lover. Instead of being a vengeful spirit or yokai, Honeonna is driven by blind love to return to her partner and while anyone besides her intended will see her as the skeleton come to life that she truly is, her lover will see her as the woman she once was. It is only after they are reunited in lovemaking that the man learns of her true nature, as he either perishes or wakes up cradling the decaying skeleton in his arms. However, the more malicious iteration of Honeonna often lives to lure men into her cave or hiding spot, upon which she drains the life force from them. Nudeonna. Nudeonna is also referred to as the Wet Woman, and she is commonly described as a snake-like demonic being, a yokai. Her name derives from the fact that her hair is always depicted as wet and stringy, and she can be found near any bodies of open water, although her most common hunting grounds are Fukushima, Niigata, and Kyushu prefectures. It's common for her to disguise herself as an ordinary woman carrying an infant in her arms, upon which she will approach passers-by and ask them to please hold her baby so she can rest for a while. Nudeonna's true form is that of a huge snake with the head of a woman. Keda-keda-onna. Keda-keda-onna is an enormously sized yokai found within the red light districts of Japan. Her name translates to the cackling woman, and apart from being huge, she most commonly presents as a middle-aged woman clad in traditional brothel kimono with thick slabs of makeup coating her ugly features. These yokai are the spirits of women who have passed away within the business, and now they dance and laugh in empty alleyways as they mock the profession that became their demise. It is only when men pass her by that she shrieks with laughter, causing the more cowardly inclined ones to faint, and he who flees will forever be haunted by the sound of her laughter ringing in his ears. Generally, these are men who have made use of the ladies of the night and mistreated them, and so Keda-keda-onna drives him to madness as punishment. Fukiko-san. Fukiko-san is a ghost, or yurei, who met a rather harsh and unwarranted early demise. Deformed from birth, she was relentlessly bullied and mistreated in school by her fellow classmates, although there are some variations where her deformation is directly caused either by said classmates or her parents. In some stories, she takes her own life, but it is at times not quite clear how or why she died. What is clear, however, is that her only friend was a frog, and after her death she became a vengeful spirit who appears whenever the rain begins to pour. She is said to attack children primarily, but she never lays a finger on those children who have been bullied or abused themselves. In fact, she supposedly never even appears directly to these children. Yuki-onna. Yuki-onna has been described both as a yurei and a yokai, and she is often portrayed as a beautiful young woman with fair skin and a translucent hue to her. She is found in the cold northern regions of Japan, especially during winter, as her name translates to Snow Woman. It is said that Yuki-onna's touch will turn you into ice yourself if she so wishes it, and she leaves no trace when she traverses the snow. Some iterations even depict her as floating. It is common that Yuki-onna may both be a guide and a destroyer to travelers lost during snowstorms, but she is also known to seduce young handsome men and even have children with them. However, if the man she seduces is aware of her true nature, he must never disclose it, or he shall meet his end. Tsudara-onna. Tsudara-onna, or the Icicle Woman, is a yokai who appears similar to Yuki-onna, as she too thrives in the colder areas of Japan and is strikingly beautiful. She is, however, made up of icicles, and she melts when spring rolls around. One story of her mentions how a young woman is kindly let into a home by a married couple, but for one reason or other they insist she take a bath. She refuses, but is eventually cowed, and when the wife opens the bathroom door, she finds that the woman has disappeared, but there's a line of icicles along the ceiling. Another story tells of a man who marries a beautiful young woman in the winter, only for her to disappear and return a year later. Another story tells of a man who marries a beautiful young woman in the winter, only for her to disappear and return a year later. She is enraged and questions why he has remarried, upon which the man accuses her of just up and leaving him, telling her never again to return. So that Onna is then devastated and pierces his heart with an icicle of her own making. Iso Onna. Iso Onna are coastal vampiric spirits often found near the Kyushu Isles, and their name means coast woman. These women feed on fishermen and Roman travelers, and are often believed to be related to the Nude Onna. Her habitat is along rocky, fast-stretching beaches, and she appears as a beautiful young woman with soaking wet hair. Iso Onna's eyes are often described as wanton and sultry, and their drenched clothes become transparent as they stick to their skin. Looking upon Iso Onna's upper body, nothing will reveal her true nature. However, her lower half is blurry and wispy as it fades into nothingness. These women hunt for blood, and possess the ability to disguise themselves as rocks and boulders while they stalk their prey. Sometimes, these Onna can be seen sitting on lone cliffs, calling out to their victims, and when they have decided on one, they will let out a deafening shriek to stun said prey. Iso Onna will then use her hair as tentacles, pulling the victim into the water and drinking his blood. Okiku. Okiku is a yurei and counts as the last of Japan's big three ghosts. She is often depicted as a dishwasher working in a fancy castle, upon which she catches the Lord and Master's eye. This may be either voluntary or involuntary on her part. Either way, the lady of the household grows jealous of her and gives Okiku the task of watching over the household's fancy dinner plates. The lady then proceeds to break one of the plates without Okiku's knowledge, making her take the fall and enraging the lord to the point where he murders Okiku and throws her in the household well. She then returns every night as a vengeful spirit, counting the plates but unable to find the missing one. Another iteration completely excludes the lady of the household and makes Okiku refusing the lord's advances be the only reason for his murder of her. Kwasu Nyobo. Kwasu Nyobo is a female yokai, and her true visage is said to be extremely terrifying, as her mouth is located on the side of her head. It is said that the men whom she appears to are those who brag about wanting hard-working wives as compensation for the extra food said man will have to sacrifice in order to feed this new wife. The Kwasu Nyobo then serves as an impostor, never eating in front of her husband. In one of these stories, the household's food rations begin to decline, and as the husband suspects his wife is eating when he can't see her, he spies on her. Upon discovering that she does indeed eat, feeding her hidden mouth, he demands a divorce. In this particular story, the man escapes her rage, but not all are so lucky. Kageonna. Kageonna translates to shadow woman, and her visage consists merely of the shadow she casts upon windows and doorways in empty, abandoned houses. Kageonna are most commonly young, beautiful women, but they can at times be elderly women, equipped with small ringing bells tied around their necks. They most commonly appear during moonlit nights, but they will never directly interact with any possible residents of the house. Instead, Kageonna remains an eerie, soundless shadow, and is a rather peaceful spirit. However, where Kageonna resides, so too do other less friendly inclined spirits. Ohaguru Betari. Ohaguru Betari are yokai found near shrines and temples, clad in traditional wedding garbs, and from behind they are easily mistaken for ordinary women. Ohaguru Betari appears at twilight, and she is deliberately concealing her head and face from view, and any man who comes too close will be greeted by her true visage. Ohaguru Betari translates to nothing but blackened teeth, and her face bears no features except for a large, gloating mouth full of black teeth. Upon revealing herself, she lets out a haunting cackle and sends her victim fleeing in terror. Japanese culture is full of interesting and terrifying spirits, ghosts, and ghouls, and if you would like to see me discuss more of them in the future, or any other similar topics, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I'm new to YouTube, and I have a lot of projects in mind, and as thus I'm very excited to share this new journey with all of you. If you've come this far, thank you for listening, and hopefully I'll see you around again in the future.